Hi there, and welcome to the second in our series of Back to Work pop-up videos. In this second session, we're going to address the topic of why should they hire you. In our last video, we touched on the topic of job search with grit. Hi, my name is Cindy, and I'm with Painters Community Adult Learning Council. Our organization provides adult learning opportunities for students within the County of Painters that includes the communities of Castor, Coronation, Brownfield, Halkirk, and all points in between. With me today is my colleague Lois.
Hi, I'm Lois Pileggi, and I work with Flagstaff Community Adult Learning, which covers a program which covers Flagstaff County, which is in East Central Alberta. And we have 10 little towns and villages and a great community that we're glad to serve.
Excellent. Thanks, Lois. Now let's start talking some more about why should they hire me. As I mentioned earlier, this is a follow-up to our first video that talked about that job search with grit. And in that last video, what we did is we identified some barriers that may be preventing us from moving forward in that job search process. And with those barriers, we kind of built a bit of a brick wall. And what we're wanting to reiterate is that don't feel you have to push that whole wall over in one swoop. Just keep chipping away at each one of those little bricks or barriers. Now, one of those little barriers may be that you're not getting any response to your job application. And could that be because we're not communicating our strengths quite solidly enough? Lois, can you help us? How can we better improve how we communicate our strengths?
Thanks, Cindy. You know, I think that when it comes to the job search journey, we can get caught in a trap of focusing on our weaknesses, on our gaps, instead of our strengths. You know, we find it pretty easy to come up with a list of the reasons why someone would not hire me. But when someone says, why should I hire you? We can be blank or kind of embarrassed, feeling like we're being boastful or something. But that really is a key part of the process, to be able to identify our strengths and to communicate them clearly to an employer. Today we want to build up our confidence and that communication skill so that employers clearly understand what we have to offer. And I'm going to start just a little PowerPoint here that gives us some inspiration on how we can start considering what our strengths are. Give me just a second here. There we go. Oops. I went straight to the PowerPoint and I didn't share my screen. Let me go back and fix that. Okay, try this again. Oh, come on. There we go. So when we start thinking about what strengths, what are the assets that I have to offer to an employer, I think that one place to start is with our skills. Maybe you're someone who's an excellent driver with a great safety record. Well, an employer should know that, right? Maybe you can operate all kinds of equipment. You can drive any piece of farm equipment, or you might be someone who's great on the computer. You can use lots of different programs. And you know, it's hard to find a job these days that doesn't involve a computer in some way, having to enter record keeping and that kind of stuff. So an employer is going to care about that. As you go down the list of the different experiences that you've had, and whether it's on the job or in other settings, you develop those skills and you want to pick out the ones that you think would be most valuable to an employer. You know, another way that we represent our strengths is with credentials. So maybe you've graduated from a diploma or a degree program, or maybe it's like safety courses. there are lots of different credentials that represent abilities and strengths. And so those are certainly things that might go on the list of what I have to offer to an employer. Another piece that I think as we're considering these experiences and skills and so on is how much. For instance, have you had 1 year of experience in selling insurance or 10 years of experience? I mean, that's going to represent a different amount of value to an employer. Have you been supervising 1 person or 15? Do you have you been working with a budget of 20,000 or 2 million? And all these different numbers apply in different jobs, but putting some numbers with the expressions of your strengths, I think really makes them more convincing and more valuable to an employer. Instead of saying some, maybe put in a number. So skills, experience, some numbers, some credentials, those are all kind of a little bit more hard and fast, concrete things, but those are not the only things that matter to an employer. One way I say it is that an employer is going to be hiring a person, not a piece of paper. So what kind of person are you? These pictures are to kind of get you thinking about some possible examples of your attitudes, your character, your personality. For instance, you might be a great puzzle solver, like someone who can really solve problems, who's intuitive, who's analytical. Those are things that are often valuable skills for an employer to know. And they're maybe broader than just saying, I can operate this piece of equipment. What about how do you face challenges? Do you stay calm and cool, managing with surprises? Those are things that might be good for an employer to know about you. Perhaps you're someone who's very outgoing and engaging. You connect with customers and the public. You connect well with your teammates. You encourage people. Again, great things for an employer to know about you. Maybe you're someone who's very focused, determined, unstoppable. Again, things that would fit great with certain jobs and other times not so important. So you're going to be picking out which of your characteristics are going to be significant and valuable to an employer. And most characteristics can be expressed either as a strength or there may be a weakness or a vulnerability. And we, of course, want to phrase it and look at it from the positive side. We come in lots of different shapes and sizes, and that includes our character and personality. And I think it's just important to recognize that just because you're not the same as someone else doesn't mean you don't have something valuable to offer. I just love this picture of these eggs. It kind of just looks like which one we are might be in the crowd to start thinking about what we have to offer. If you're getting kind of stuck about, okay, what can I say about myself? There is a great website. ALICE is Alberta Learning Information Services that the provincial government runs, and it's got a lot of valuable information about careers, jobs, training, like just some really cool things there. And one of the sections is this Career Insight section where you can do a little quiz and find out kind of what your preferences are, what your strengths are. And there are others out there, but I think this is a great one to start with. So that might be one that would help you kind of dig in a little bit deeper if you're kind of getting stuck in analyzing yourself. So that's kind of step one. We've identified some of the strengths and assets that we have to offer: our experience, our skills, our personality, our character, lots of really important things. Now, step two is to think about the other side of this relationship. As a job applicant and as an employee, I'm considering what I have to offer, but I also need to think about the employer. What is the employer most interested in? What matters to them? And when I start to reflect on that, I often use the two W's. The first W is the wish list. I would say that most employers have a wish list of what they're looking for in an employee, sorry. And there are some things that are very specific on that wish list, very not negotiable. You know, you are not driving my truck if you don't have a driver's license. You know, just not happening. Other things that are perhaps a little more negotiable. For instance, I might really think it would be great to have someone with 5 years experience, but I might take someone with 2. Or maybe someone who's starting out great if they kind of convince me that they're can make up for that lack of experience with their other skills. So an employer is going to have a wish list that maybe short, maybe long, and it's important to know what they're looking for. If you're considering applying to a job that maybe you're not as familiar with, a different type of job, you may want to do a little bit of research. And if we go back to that ALICE site, they have a section called OCInfo, like occupational information. And that's very interesting because they have almost every job that's in Alberta with lists of what training's required, where you can take the training, but also what are the skills and character traits that most employers are interested in that occupation. And so that can give you some insight and even some language about how you might want to present yourself to an employer. So I really recommend that as a great place to just to explore a little bit so that you're sure you're matching what a typical employer would be looking for. So we have the wish list, the first W. The second W, I don't know if you can guess, is the worry list. Most employers have a little worry list. And it's those little red flags, those things that they've been burned by in the past. And so some of the things that we need to share with an employer are things that will help them understand that we don't fit the worry list. We want to match the wish list, and we do not want to match the worry list. You know, if an employer maybe they've had an employee who's, just been a bit of a troublemaker and caused disruption in the team of coworkers. So that might bump that up the worry list. They're looking for some proof that the new person who's applying is going to be someone who fits in well with the team and is a good communicator and all those kind of things. Maybe they've had trouble with people, not showing up on time. So then maybe they're looking for some evidence that this is someone who's going to be reliable and prompt and will do their share. So when you start to think about the worry list, some of them are really more in the interpersonal pieces, I would say. And so those are the things that we want to make clear to an employer that we do not fit that. And one extra tip I would say, in rural Alberta, travel is always going to be an issue. And so even if your job does not include driving, you might just want to put on a driver's license, assuming you have one, because it's that bit about how are they going to get to work. So just a little extra tip. So we have gone through identifying strengths, thinking about some of those different categories. We've gone through the employer side, the wish list and the worry list. So now we want to pull those pieces together. We've kind of got all this floating around in our head. Maybe you've made some notes, but we want to move on and start putting it down on paper. We want to, this I think really kind of pulls it all together. So why should someone hire me? I think you should have a top 10. And then that's ready for you to use. These are the kind of the building blocks that we'll use when you're writing a resume, when you're talking to prospective employers, when you're interviewing, when you're writing your cover letter. Any of the times that we're communicating with employers, we want to have some really solid reasons why someone should consider me, and be able to communicate them effectively. And I think the 10 kind of narrows it down to kind of a easy to remember, kind of keeps us focused to the most important ones. But you can make it a little bit longer if you wanted. So for instance, maybe I might put for number 1, I'm really reliable. I can be depended on to show up on time and do my very best. So that's something I want to make sure an employer knows about me. Maybe it's my experience. I have 3 years of experience in using Excel to track information. So mount how much experience I have. Maybe it's I am a really excellent problem solver. I can have lots of creativity and can be resourceful in coming up with solutions. Maybe I'm someone who is an excellent negotiator. I can be tactful and diplomatic and still come up to the bottom line. There can be many, many different things that you would include, and they should be, obviously specific to you, but really taking the time to take my list of the things that I know that are valuable about me and matching those to the wish list or the worry list, the anti list of the worry list, and getting them narrowed down to a top 10, you really have built, hopefully, really built your confidence as you understand more clearly what you have to offer, and now you can communicate it. And so I think that this can be just a really valuable process to go through that sets us up for success as we continue on this job search journey. So I'm going to say that that's a great spot to stop for now. Cindy, I'm going to turn it back to you.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Lois. Some great tips there as we work through the wish list of employers, connecting that with the strengths that we do have and communicating that by establishing our top 10 list. Those are excellent tools to help us chip away at some of those job search barriers that we have. Now we know why they should hire me. If you would like to watch this video again or share it with your family and friends, we will have it available on our website at Flagstaff Adult Learning's website, www.fcal.net, and at the Painter's Community Adult Learning site, painterslearning.ca. We will also be sharing it on social media, so please take a look and figure out why should they hire me.